You guys, I was going to push this first.
Good morning, everyone. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, and thank you, everybody, for coming. I really want to thank Representative Hogan for setting up this Mass DOT briefing on the Gleasondale Bridge. As someone that obviously represents Stowe, but also represents towns like Acton, Marlborough, and Hudson, get a lot of comments from people about what's been happening over the past couple of years once the problems were found with the bridge. So I really want to thank Representative Hogan for organizing this briefing to answer questions and address concerns. And of course, I'm happy to be a resource as well, so please be in touch with my office. My district director, Danilo Senna, is here, who covers this area for constituent services. So with that, I'd like to introduce Representative Hogan.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you, everyone, for being here. It is 8:05, and everyone is filling the seats here. I'm so very impressed. I'm thrilled that the MassDOT team is willing to come out today and join us. MassDOT, especially Division 3, have been great partners with us, not only in Stowe, but throughout our district. We've been able to bring both money and projects that are moving us forward in so many different ways. And MassDOT has been a partner both on the state level and with our local folks as well. As we know, this bridge was originally built in 1947, and it is officially 70 years old, and we know and have known since 2015 that it needs to be replaced and restored. And since safety concerns were first raised about the bridge loading ability in 2015, we've been working to secure funding, which we have for the bridge, and that is noted on all of the work on the MassDOT site that will let you know that there is. And I would like to begin by welcoming our MassDOT project manager for the bridge, John Fallon, who will give us an introduction, and also project designer Jamie French, who is going to move us through the famous design phase of the project. So whenever anyone asks why this can't be done in a year, we talk about the design phase of the project, because it's very both inclusive and it takes a while to get done. So we all ask and thank for your patience. Again, Senator Jamie Eldridge for joining me today. The two of us are always out there doing what we can around funding and working with MassDOT and everyone else in the community to ensure that we have the funding that we need. Jess Stedman, who is our town planner, for moving us through the project. Town leaders, Jim Salvi is here today. Thank you so much, Jim, for being here. As well as our town administrator, Bill Wrigley, who is always leading the way for us. Chief Bosworth, thank you for being here, Chief. Mike Clayton, Superintendent, thank you so much, Superintendent of Streets. And Craig Martin, our building commissioner. So we have a host of folks here to answer questions, and we hope we can. It's important that we all move forward together, and we know how critical it is to have a timely process, and we are looking forward to that. We know the problem arose in 2015. We're able to secure funding by 2016, and we know that we are on the project list at MassDOT to be done by for the building and the bridge itself to begin in 2020, and probably would see completion by 21. So we are really moving at a pace. I think that some of these projects can move a lot more slowly, so we are very grateful again to MassDOT for understanding the problem, for responding, and for everyone in town government who is also very responsive. I remember Brian Burke and Bill Wrigley at a meeting at Division 3 in Worcester, and we needed to sit down immediately and find out what needed to happen. They were there, and so was MassDOT. The senator and I were able to put this together, so they're able to say We're moving along. We have the funding. We'll begin the design phase soon. And so I will turn it over. Who would like to start first?
Thanks.
All right, please, take it away, mascot.
Thank you, Representative. Again, my name is John Fallon. I work for Mass DOT in the Bridge Project Management section in the Boston office. And with me today is Jamie French from our highway design consultant from Fuss & O'Neill. So the purpose of the project is to address the structural condition or needs of the superstructure. So when I say superstructure, I'm referring to sort of everything above the piers and the abutments, so the deck of the bridge. As the representative noticed back in around 2015, through routine inspections, it became apparent that there was some issues with the bridge deck, and as a result, the Jersey barriers reducing that Gleasondale bridge to one lane, alternating with temporary signals, was implemented to keep traffic off the bad part of the bridge deck. So Mass DOT entered into a contract with Fuss & O'Neill to do the highway design for this project. Mass DOT's in-house bridge design group is doing the bridge design. In about 2017, the activity started for this particular effort with wetlands delineation, surveying, utility inventorying, and things along that nature. So in 2017, we basically focused on doing a lot of investigating the existing conditions and getting the data for the design as we go forward. We coordinated a few times with the town, which got great input, and we're going to continue to coordinate with the town regularly on this project. Had a couple of meetings at the site with abutters to try to understand the concerns that they had. But this project is what we call is a footprint bridge replacement, superstructure replacement. So we're focusing on the bridge itself. For the intent of getting through the design and getting to construction as quick as possible. So what the kind of schedule was as we go forward, we're anticipating getting the 25% design plans, which we call preliminary engineering plans, probably submitted to us from the design consultant in early 2019, and we would have a public hearing probably spring of 2019, and what we would do is we would present the details of the preliminary engineering plans that will show, exact limits of work, where, if any right-of-way easements might be needed or not, things of that nature. We'd get public comment on the actual plan presented that night, and we'd take into consideration the comments that we've received as much as we can practically and implement it into the final design. So we anticipate final design going on through 2019. At the end of 2019, we hope to have the plans completed. And right now, Mass DOT has the estimated advertising date, and that's the date that we would make the plans and specifications available to contractors to bid on. And that is December 28, 2019. And as the state rep had mentioned, the funding for the construction has been allocated on the 2020 TIP. So the money for the construction has been budgeted, and the amount that's on the TIP seems very appropriate for the needs of this construction. I think maybe at this point I can turn it over to Jamie a little bit just to talk about some of the aspects of the project and details to that extent.
Thank you, John. Again, my name is Jamie French. I'm with Fuss & O'Neill, the design consultant. As they both mentioned, we've done a lot of field investigations so far. We went out, we inspected all of the substructure components to make sure that they're still in good enough condition to reuse. We actually found the northern abutment to be in very poor condition, so that one we are intending on replacing in its entirety. The remaining substructure components we will reuse. So far, we've completed a preliminary structures report, and what that does is it basically summarizes the existing bridge, what the conditions are, can we reuse it, what parts can we reuse, and things of that nature. So right now, we are in the process of reviewing and finalizing the bridge type selection worksheet. And what that does is it basically says, we're replacing the superstructure, what are we replacing it with? What is it gonna look like? You know, where's the sidewalks gonna be, and that sort of thing. Basically, it's gonna look pretty much like it does now, because we are reusing 3 out of the 4 substructure components. We can't really change the bridge too much, or else we wouldn't be able to reuse those pieces. From there, we go into final design. Part of that design, you know, we look at the roadway profile with a new structure. Can we reuse the existing? Do we need to raise it? How will it match into abutting properties, adjacent roads, things like that. We also get into more of the other components like environmental coordination, utility coordination. Do we need to move the utilities? Are they in the way? Usually they are. There's a lot of area utilities there. So we can't use a crane if there's a utility right there. It's not safe. So we have to get into that, and that is a very long process. So that's part of the reason the design takes so long, is we have to get that all set up so that we can get in there and construct it in a timely manner. When we get into final design, we also develop all of the structural details, things of that nature. So, and then we go into contract plans where we just basically wrap it all up and get it ready to advertise. So I think you're going to get a bridge that looks a lot like it does now. It's going to continue to have 2 sidewalks. It'll have a different rail, but it's going to look a lot like it does now. So that's the most important thing.
John and Jimmy, can you go through again and just sort of tick off the important points in terms of the calendar?
Sure.
For the design, you know, for the
Yep.
design and construction and finalizing?
Yeah, definitely. So we anticipate getting submitted to us from Jamie and her folks at her company, the preliminary design, which we call the 25% design, in early 2019, around February. So what DOT will then do is we will review it internally, make any recommendations, edits, or what else is needed, and then we would have a public hearing based on those plans. And the public hearing would be the spring of 2019. We're sort of holding as a time frame for that. And again, that's a public hearing that will put a notice in the newspaper, have a verbatim testimony so that we can get public comment and get feedback on what we're presenting. So that's spring of 2019. So from spring of 2019 to the end of 2019, we'll be doing the 75% design and 100% design plan development for that. And that includes, as Jamie had indicated, responding to the comments that we received at the public hearing in the spring, as well as developing the details for utility coordination, final highway design, right-of-way plans, if necessary. And also during the final design, we would be looking into the construction time duration. We call it a CTD. And what that is an actual an analysis on, okay, how is this bridge going to be constructed? And we look at what's the most feasible mean by which methods will be used to construct it based upon the plans that we developed, the 25% design plans. And we come up with a duration that we feel a contractor could build this bridge in. And, it's one of the questions that you had earlier about the duration. Right now, because we haven't gotten to the preliminary design phase, we're still just short of the 25% design level, so there's a lot of details that we're amassing right now that will determine the actual, a duration that we can sort of stand behind. But right now, typically, we would think if the construction started in 2021, would be probably 2 construction seasons to complete the work. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. The time that the notice to proceed is issued for the contractor. Say, for example, it's issued towards the end of the calendar year. Typical winter work doesn't happen on some of the elements, so there'll be a little bit of time for the contractor to get all his submittals in and whatnot and get up and going. So right now, we're saying 2 construction seasons for the duration, but again, we'll better refine that as the plans get developed.
John, would you say that what's going to happen in terms of the two construction seasons, that each side of the bridge will be done so that one side will always be left open
Yeah,
unless, of course, there's a day or two or whatever of something?
No, that's a very good point. What we're going to do, maybe it's a good thing. We kind of think it is. We're going to use the same setup that's out there now to construct the bridge. So right now it's down to one lane with alternating traffic. So we're going to use that to construct the bridge. So at least the user of the bridge are familiar with that sort of setup that's been out there. And what we would do is we'd construct the bridge in half. So we would, the piece behind the barrier, we would demolish and construct, and then move the traffic over to the new bridge, after new part of the bridge, and then demolish and construct the other side. So we do it in phases using kind of the setup that's out there now, just sort of shifting traffic one side to the other.
John, when you say demolish, you're really talking about the concrete?
The bridge deck and whatnot,
Portion,
yeah, in the northern abutment.
Jamie, did you have any questions?
I think the only question I had, and I know there might be some people in attendance, is that I've gotten some emails from people that did want to make sure that, and I know it's kind of a tight space, but they wanted to make sure there's ample space for the bike lanes. And also I've heard some commentary that, a lot of people canoe and the waters below, and whether it would be possible for Mass DOT to somehow be able to help make that easier through some, construction of some sort of pavement leading down to the waters below the bridge. So that's some of the commentary I've heard from Stowe, from some Stowe constituents.
Yeah, we've also heard that as well. Thank you for that, and I'll attempt to address that a little bit, and maybe Jamie can jump in afterwards. But so the roadway cross section out there now, it's two 11-foot lanes with 4-foot shoulders and the 6-foot sidewalks. So we're currently proposing to put that sort of same configuration back. So there'll still be the 4-foot shoulders with the 6-foot sidewalk. As far as the canoe access, we did early on, even before the project started, there was a letter from Orr's organization expressing the same sentiment that you just presented as well. And something that I know we did have some conversations with them early and intend to follow up with them. One of the challenges with that, we definitely do understand access to the river is a great idea, but entering onto private property to sort of make improvements to the river, it's a challenge. It involves taking right away to make it accessible to get down to the river. And one of the other issues, one of the more important issues, is you don't want to, I guess, encourage people to park on the road in that area too. It presents a dangerous condition. So something that we definitely heard and we need to continue to look into. I don't know, Jamie, if you had any thoughts on any of those.
Well, I agree with John on the access to the river. That is a difficult thing to add. We actually did it on another project in Mass, and it was huge. We had to do a parking lot area because of the safety concerns, and then when you start getting into right-of-way impacts, that extends the process of this tremendously, because now you're going to negotiations and trying to buy property from people, and it can take a long time to do that. As far as the width of the bridge, because we are keeping 3 of the 4 substructure components, we don't have a lot of options to widen it out because it just won't fit. We're trying to, keep the cost down as much as we can, and because those components are still in good shape, there's no reason to not keep them and reuse them. So,
Thank you.
Jamie or John, is there a way to think about this in terms of advising us from your point of view of future projects that might happen?
Yeah,
beyond the important reconstruction and safety issues that are going to be addressed.
It's almost like you're reading my mind here. Great point. We have been, as I mentioned before, meeting with the town, and the meetings have been great, and talking with Jess. We understand there was some complete street money that was allocated for the town of Stowe to do street improvements in the area, and so we've been talking to the town about that, on how to best not, I guess, preclude any improvements that the town might be thinking about in that area. So, we'll continue those discussions with Jess and the rest of the people at the town on how to accomplish that. But we're sort of focusing on, how do we best get the bridge sort of fixed and operating as 2 lanes as quickly as possible. So if we sort of extend our limits in this project outside of that purpose, it just sort of slows things down a little bit. It requires probably more right-of-way, more permitting and whatnot. So I guess to answer your question, we're definitely coordinating with the town on that so that we don't propose anything that would preclude something that the town might be thinking about in the future on either side of the bridge as far as complete streets improvements.
Great. Now, are there any other questions? Why don't we folks answer from,
Okay.
as they come up?
Gentleman in the back.
Can you tell us what the width of the right-of-way is at the bridge and what the width of the bridge is now?
Yeah, so it's the lane width is 30 feet, I believe, right? And then the out is 40. Would be
It's like 46.
46. Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure at this moment where the layout right-of-way line is for the bridge, but if you have a vague idea.
No, I mean they're not. It's not very parallel to the bridge, so they kind of go all over the place. So it's not sort of just a straight offset.
But
Isn't there a county layout for that?
yeah, we have the information, just
Yep.
don't know the answer at
Yep.
this point. And I don't think it extends extensively on either side of the bridge. It's typically, a few feet on either side, but we can definitely find that out for you.
Yeah, the point I'm making is if you have a width, say it's 80 feet and the bridge is at 36 or whatever, there is some room to come to the sides to accommodate bike paths or walking paths and that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely, it's a good point. Actually, this sort of gentleman, then he was saying that.
Yeah, on the canoe access, my name is Alan Fierce. I'm the president of the board of orders.
Okay.
Julia Carano,
Nice to meet you.
staff development director. We've been pleading this case
Yep.
for years. People currently use a path that goes down from the east side down to the river, and as an access, it's very rough and through poison ivy, and there are rocks at the bottom that shouldn't be there. But people do use it all the time, and our basic goal has been to have a real canoe, safe put-in, takeout either at that point or now that the town has acquired the Kane land. That's another option. And it would be a huge disappointment if one of those two things did not happen. It really does have to be one or the other. We've been waiting for years. People are going to continue to use it. My bottom line is, at least like a doctor would say, do no harm.
Right.
If you can't build the put-in, please don't eradicate the one that's there now,
Right.
the rough-hewn one.
Yeah.
We'll be out there demonstrating or blocking construction if that's things. So please don't do that.
Yes.
But one of those two options for canoe access has to happen. I'm looking at Jesse. I don't know what the town's plans for the Kane line are, but these are two governmental entities, the town and DOT, that ought to be together with an overarching plan that includes that canoe put-in. It doesn't have to be at your bridge. Now, one of my questions is, currently, I don't know where that right-of-way line is, whether the current rough access is on DOT property or private property. Do you know?
Alan, I'm not sure people know what your question is. Can you repeat it?
No, I think I understand. I mean, you have the details on the plan here. I mean, it's just, we could talk
Perhaps you
afterwards.
can do that off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be that specific, if
Yeah.
we do that offline, that'd be
Great
great.
idea, yeah.
I have a question regarding the canoe input. Is there any way in the middle property that you can have where maybe there's a parking lot down there and you can enter just below the dam?
Yeah, again, I mean, it's a good idea, but with, state projects using, federal money for construction, acquiring right-of-way, it's a pretty lengthy process, and we have to demonstrate that acquiring the right-of-way, someone else's property, is for a highway function. as part of the project. So it's kind of a tough process to get through. And as I mentioned before, I think what, as this gentleman had mentioned, what we can say today is we'll do nothing to harm the current access to the way people use the location now. We won't prevent that. But entering onto private property, if that is the case, it's a challenge, and bringing up any sort of access path up to what the current regulations and standards dictate usually results in needing more land to do that. And again, we're sort of getting away from the focus of the project to fix the superstructure and get that addressed. But we're going to continue to look into it.
You touched on this briefly. I just want to go back to it for a moment. I understand you're planning on doing the two sides one at a time to leave the bridge open. Given the 2 construction seasons, are you expecting lengthy total closures of the bridge while you're setting up or through the process? Because I live on the south side of the bridge, and when it's closed, I basically live in Hudson.
Yeah.
No offense to Hudson, but...
Well, it's a good question. I think, from what we heard early on, we didn't want to do it. Any length of closure is not good, and especially just from talking to Stowe Police and Fire with regard to closing the bridge and maintaining an acceptable level of emergency service to both sides. Closing the bridge is not an option. There might be times where we're doing the final paving where they might have to do like a temporary closure for an hour or two or something.
But brief, not weeks, not extended.
But with the configuration and sort of staging it one side at a time, it allows us that opportunity to always keep one lane of traffic open, and that's our charge.
Awesome, thanks.
Sure.
And that kind of answered one of my questions. So you're not going to close it and do it in 100 days like they did in Hudson, something like that?
No.
My preference is I don't think it's that way, but that's irrelevant. Well, your timeline is painfully slow. I mean, we're not going to start until 3 years from now.
Yeah, I always, whenever
We're not starting 3 years from now, and maybe you want to reiterate, John, again, the timeline.
Yeah, so
it's
the
a process.
Currently, Mass DOT projects the advertising date. And again, that's the date we put the plans out to bid, so contractors can bid on them at December 28th of 2019. So bids, when we put them out to bid, they're available for the contractors to take them and submit bids. Bids are opened. The lowest qualified bidder is identified, and we put together a construction contract. So construction, if that date is met, the 12/28/2019, construction could commence as early as 2020, spring of 2020. Right now, we don't know if it's going to be a 1 or 2 construction season project, probably 2 construction, so we see it starting in 2020 and ending in end of 2021.
So, Mr. Martin, I think, too, are you referring to our season in Stowe, our apple season in Stowe, and the sensitivity to that, and the 3,000 to 4,000 cars that might be crossing the bridge increasing and reviewing that?
Well, if I was king for a day, I'd have it started in April 1st and finished by the beginning of August, but that's not going to happen, obviously. Having it open one lane does help accommodate to a large degree. It's not the way we'd like it to be, but we do run a lot of traffic going through those streets. Police chief is very aware of that also. True. There's advantage to both ways, obviously. And, it's working what we've got now most of the time.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a good point. I mean, as we go through final design, we continue to work with the town, but we can include things in the construction contract as far as making sure that the contractor coordinates with the town and local businesses and apple picking season and stuff like that to make sure that variable message boards are put up, allowing people know that the bridge is one lane.
Appreciate that.
There are certain designs of construction that I know you had talked about earlier meetings about traffic calming. Just, pillars that go up that kind of optically create a slowdown.
Right.
Are they still being considered and drawn into the design, like just the traffic slowing?
Yeah, I don't recall that conversation, but yeah, not for this project. I mean, there's not any crosswalks.
We had seen, actually, we had seen that there were bridges that designed, different bridges that you did that, I remember seeing a picture of like pillars, for some reason, like taller pillars on the sides of the bridge as you go through, like tend to slow people down. There were different pictures that we had seen, that I saw probably a year ago, when you guys were talking about the design. And I just want you to keep that in mind, that people that live in Gleasondale are really interested in calming issues, and anything you can do to build that into the design would be much, much appreciated.
Yeah, we're not changing the design speed or the posted speed. It's 30 miles per hour now, so that's what it will be in the end. We're not, because it's a footprint bridge, we're just focusing on the bridge, and the limits of the work on either side are minimal. So we're really the alignment to improve sort of the
I'm not asking
geometry.
about the alignment, I'm talking about
But that would sometimes will lead to
like the
people driving.
walkway, the handrail and stuff like that, that just, if there's anything you can do to optically create an impression that people should slow down would be great.
Okay, all right.
As you do the handrail design, I think it's really important that there be a nice view of the river upstream and downstream be included, because I think it's really a special place. You want to have people see that as they come in.
Right, so, that's a definite point that we've heard, from the town and some of the earlier meetings that we've had. And so what we're currently proposing, we need to propose a crash-tested railing that's safe for the application. So there's a bridge in Hudson that was recently done that this has our typical bridge railing, and it's compared to what's out there now, it does provide sort of better views of the water. But I have some pictures of the Hudson Bridge railing. You can sort of pass around if you want. And that's what it would look like.
Yes.
I did have one quick question I forgot. You say this southern abutment's fine and northern one is no good. Are you counting the ones in the middle of the river when you say that, or the ones at the actual ends?
So the abutment, the northern abutment would be the one at the end. The piers that are in the river, those are fine.
So 3 out of 4 that are basically okay. Is that correct? I think it's 4 that are all together. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
That's pretty good then, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for a 70-year-old bridge, yeah, definitely.
So that was the question I had. If one has deteriorated, will the other 3 last another 70 years?
Well, part of our investigation. So we do material testing on the abutments to test the different content of, let's say, chloride, air, and whatnot. So the southern abutment checked out fine, but for particular reasons, the northern abutment did have some advanced deterioration, and it could be.
I got to ride over the very first, the first week that the bridge was open on my going to first grade. So, and I don't expect to ride over this one, but I just in 70 years, I don't think I'm going to be doing that. But I just wanted to be sure for everybody else.
Sure.
I'm going to take off my horse hat and put on my bike helmet. My question is, there are 4-foot lanes adjacent to the roadway. You've got 11 feet of roadway, 4 feet of shoulder,
Right.
and then a sidewalk. Is there a curb?
Yes. Yeah.
Because the recommended width for a bike lane with a curb is 5 feet.
Right.
You're only giving 4.
Right. I mean, again, we're working with the the width. If we kind of go outside of the width of the bridge, we have to look at all new abutments and piers that will be addressed. But what we can do is, and what we're going to do in final design, is look into maybe narrowing the travelway line. So going from an 11-foot lane to maybe 10.5 foot, and put that to the
Is
shoulder.
there no way, even with the existing bridge abutments, to extend the width of the bridge by 1 foot each way? That doesn't seem like it should be impossible, given your engineering skills and abilities.
Well,
That's 1 foot on each side, and then you'd have the standard safe width for a bike lane with a curb.
and again, you know, the purpose of the footprint bridge program is to
Save money.
replace loans, to address structurally deficient bridges.
But
and
here's
put
where we
man-
could chip in some of our, complete streets money, perhaps to help make the town safe for bike riders.
But again, our project limits are basically the bridge and a short amount of feet on either side. So you're connecting into a roadway system that doesn't have 5-foot shoulders currently, right?
But there's no curb. You can have a smaller, breakdown lane or whatever you call it, where there's no curb, but it's the curb that becomes a danger, when you're on a smaller lane. It does become a safety issue, and I think it would be, I don't know who sets the rules that says you've got to follow exactly the same footprint. That seems, is that regulatory? Is that statutory? I bet it's just your policy, and it's based on budget. And it seems to me there ought to be some way to get 1 more foot.
Can I have a note here? I think that as we go through the process, the design process, when is the next meeting to discuss the design as we're moving forward? And at what point, at what percentage are we done with the bridge design?
Yeah, so it's a good point. So what we were planning on doing, and we talked to Jess about this at our last meeting, was so when the 25% design plans are submitted to DOT for our review,
Yes.
we thought that would be a good time to sit down again with the town while the plans are actively being reviewed and sort of walk through the plans with Jess and his staff and go through, hey, this is what we're thinking about presenting at the public hearing, and these are the plans that we want you to review, and what are your comments? So basically, to answer your question, we're thinking early in 2019, to come back to the town and meet.
So I would say Alan and Oars and folks in general, I think it's going to be important. That meeting's going to be critical, and I think it's working through the town, maybe looking at the funding that we have outside of the bridge funding, and having those discussions now as we move forward, which is why we're having these meetings and moving forward with the design meetings. But we are, these are the funds we have for that bridge. If we need and want to talk about other things, I think now is the time to do it. And if we have other funding from other sources and we want to see what we can do with them, I think now is the time to have that discussion, certainly, before we go beyond the 25% in design. Does anybody from the town have any comments on that?
Yeah, let me just put this in context from where, when we first realized the bridge went defunct, we recognized this was going to be a big hit on Gleasondale. I mean, that was clearly the first thing that went through our minds, but we quickly saw some opportunity here. So the first thing that we did is we worked with DOT to try to match the survey that we knew they were going to do, and we had already allocated some funds, and we surveyed the entire Gleasondale corridor. So really that's the kind of foundation that you need to have in place before you do another road project. So like Lower Village, one of the first things we did before we started that project out there was we got the survey done. So that was something that was great because we were able to build off what MassDOT was already doing. Around the same time, just a little thereafter, we finished our Complete Streets Prioritization Plan. So that allowed us to kind of tap into this new stream of funding. Several projects were in Gleasondale. Some of those projects we applied for this year, we didn't get funding for those projects, but they're certainly on following years. So one of our hopes, and just like looking forward, was to what degree can we use this this process and this realization that we have to redo the bridge to maybe leverage some further movement and opportunity down there. One thing that we wouldn't want to do is make some big plans to try to fix some of the transportation problems in Gleasondale and start them right after 2 years of construction has ended on the bridge. In a perfect world, they maybe could be happening at the same time. We could all grin and bear it and get through it. To that end, one of the things that we've been talking about doing is thinking about and this is what I think John was describing earlier in one of our last meetings, was what is the town thinking of doing? What are the potential opportunities down there? We don't want to get in your way if you're going to make further improvements. So we've talked with the Gleasondale neighborhood for a long time now about some of the traffic problems, the speed problems, the lack of pedestrian infrastructure. We don't yet have the answers. We haven't done the engineering and the design. We just have the survey. So right now we're trying to figure out, could sidewalks even work? Could bike lanes even work? Do we have the space? First things first, let's make sure that the bridge doesn't get built to preclude us from actually taking advantage of that if it is possible. So the next step here is we did get some funding for some complete streets projects. That was for this year. They are separate. I'm happy to talk about those, but they're separate from Gleasondale. If we go forward and we get some engineering work potentially done down there, a couple of years from now, we may have a compelling project to go back to the state for further funding. So we're definitely working with the state here, and we're trying to figure out, how can we get some further engineering here and do something else in Gleasondale. But that's going to really take the neighborhood to come together and really think about some sort of consensus about what kinds of improvements they would want to see. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's definitely a work in progress, but this is actually, as much as this has been a burden on the neighborhood, we've able to look at it and think about how can we turn this into an opportunity to get further. So.
Hi, Jesse. Maybe I missed it, and I think that's a great idea that you're going to try to incorporate Alan's plan for a bike path across this bridge if possible, and bring in the Gleasondale neighbors for a more holistic approach to building along outside the bridge. But it does seem like the bridge is going to drive the process because it's on its way. When do you expect to be bringing in the neighbors and bringing in the bike constituents, which is a big force here in Stowe, to start that kind of planning? If you said it, I missed it.
Yeah, I'm trying to work closely with the MassDOT schedule because I don't want to jump in too early, but I don't know if you want to
reiterate the calendar again.
Yeah, so right now we currently have sort of an anticipated construction start happening in 2020, late 2020, 2021. So, but
I think I had that, and I've been at prior meetings. I'm just trying to get a handle on what Stowe's plan is for the Gleasondale neighbor. Are you going to be tracking that so these people here, they can get involved? Alan can bring his bike people with helmets, without helmets, to the meeting starting, do you think, in 2020?
No, I think the next thing that we had in mind that we talked about was either February of 2019 or early spring was going to be the design process really getting underway. And what we agreed to at the last meeting was, let's get some input prior to doing 25% design. Because by the time you get to 25%, you put in a lot of work. And so if we can get a little bit of feedback prior to that, maybe we can make some, take some efficient input. So, yeah. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and I'm wondering if I understand your question correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he might be asking the complete street project that the town is doing. When would that be in construction, and when would that start the design phase and stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So I think so right now on our capital plan right now we have some money set that we have kind of alerted the capital planning committee that we may be coming forward to try to do an engineering plan for Gleasondale Village. Obviously, we don't know what that would look like because we want to make sure that we have some good consensus there. So on one hand, it'll be up to, I think, the planning board and the voters at town meeting to allocate that kind of funding. But once we have a plan in place, let's say we engineer something, everybody agrees, we've got space to make some good improvements, then the question becomes like how would we build it, how could we pay for it? At that point, I think, is when we start looking back to the Complete Streets program. And even if we can't get it all done at once, we could say, hey, there's a couple really core pieces of this corridor. We have the whole plan in place. We know that if we build one piece, we won't preclude ourselves from being able to build the rest. So maybe there's a chance to get some of those Complete Streets projects folded into that. So, a little different than, Lower Village. We were able to get a great MassWorks grant. We were able to do it all at once. I'm not sure yet. We're still trying to figure out exactly how Gleasondale would work. It might just look a little differently. We might be looking at the Complete Streets program instead. And those are things we're figuring out as this process goes on. So.
Well, thank you. I know you're very busy with a lot of different things, and if I asked you to repeat anything you said earlier, I apologize.
Sorry.
Is Mass DOT aware of the Eversource Sudbury to Hudson transmission line that is going through the south side of Gleasondale likely? Because Gleasondale is seeming like it's going to have two concurrent large construction projects going on, and we're going to get smucked on both the bridge side and the Eversource side if that goes through. Are you guys even aware of that or in talks with Eversource about their project?
So, what we typically do is when we get to the 25% design level, we would have a site utility meeting with all the affected utilities as it pertains to the bridge project. And I'm sure at that time, we would probably get some feedback from Eversource on their other projects, and would need to accommodate that or sort of plan for that if possible.
Are you aware that there are high transmission lines that are going through the south side of Gleasondale likely?
On the bridge?
No, this is what I'm saying. It's not the existing infrastructure,
right,
and it's not at the bridge, but it is directly on the other side of Gleasondale, cutting through, putting in either high tension lines or likely under road lines, but it's going to cut off road access on the south side.
Yeah, it's a good point, something that we'll have to take into consideration, but as we develop our traffic management for the design.
Are there any other questions? So thank you, everyone, for being here. Brian Burke, our selectman, is also here, and thank you.
So is our chair, Jim Salvi.
He was introduced earlier, Brian, but thank you. And Valerie O'Days from Assistant Planning, and thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is how projects get done right, is with your input. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue our conversations. We'll continue to make information available. You have MassDOT. You can go through our office for any questions that you have with MassDOT or the senators. And with the local questions, Jess Stedman is and continues to be very helpful. So thank you all so much. We'll be here in a few minutes if you have any questions, other questions. And thanks again for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
That's like one of our highest ranked projects right now. Yeah, it's just that intersection.